New Orleans still stands, and New Orleans is truly positioned, not only as we have evolved, but we're empowered for the next 20 years.
That's the mayor of New Orleans today at a wreath-laying event to commemorate the 20-year anniversary of Hurricane Katrina. The wreath was placed at a memorial for the almost 100 unclaimed or unidentified victims of the storm.
Well, Hurricane Katrina was one of the worst storms to ever hit the United States in terms of casualties and caused more than $160 billion in damage. KGW was there to cover that disaster and the people from the Northwest who went to help.
Water is coming in the courtyard. Waves are crashing.
20 years ago, a storm like no other gathered strength over water and slammed into the Gulf Coast. Katrina hitting hard as a Category 3 hurricane into New Orleans, Louisiana, and the Mississippi Gulf Coast, with winds reaching 125 miles per hour. Those winds caused the first round of devastation, wiping out homes, buildings, and key infrastructure. And then it was the water. In New Orleans, powerful storm surges overwhelmed levees and flood walls. Pumps failed too. The water had nowhere to go.
Just days after the storm, we landed in New Orleans when the helicopters at the airport outnumbered the planes. These were rescue helicopters, Blackhawks everywhere.
John Becker is a news anchor in Knoxville, Tennessee. But in 2005, he was a go-to reporter and anchor at KGW, sent to cover Katrina.
We have KGW photographers and producers fanned out around the disaster zone.
John was on the ground to bring news to the Pacific Northwest of the most damaging hurricane in recent history.
Days turned into weeks, turned into months. This was a prolonged disaster, and it really brought out the worst in Mother Nature, but it brought out the best in people.
That included many people from Oregon, like this local FEMA team that turned a New Orleans airport terminal into an emergency room.
Like a war zone. That's the only thing I can compare it to.
Life and death work, and there was plenty of both. More than 1,800 people perished.
This surpasses everything I've ever seen. I don't think anybody here has ever seen anything like the total despair.
That despair was everywhere, with floodwaters submerging neighborhood after neighborhood, often the homes of the most vulnerable, waiting on rooftops for help. The federal response was criticized.
It was very difficult, especially in our own country, to see people suffering.
Joe DiCarlo has seen suffering around the world in his long career with Portland-based Medical Teams International. He was in New Orleans with the aid organization helping people with medical needs. One role was relieving local medical workers who needed a break.
They refused to leave their patients. And so that gave us the privilege and the opportunity to help relieve them so they could get some break and work on their own matters.
DiCarlo says Katrina approached the Gulf Coast like a slow-moving freight train ready to crash. Medical teams took out the gear from a dental care bus like this and loaded it with supplies, driving it cross-country in advance of the storm. They stayed in the Gulf Coast helping for 4 years, expanding their role beyond health and spiritual care, coordinating volunteers to rebuild. DiCarlo says so many of you made it happen.
Medical Teams was able to raise $6.9 million for Katrina, and that was one of the rallying points that the people of the Northwest did. That's how they manifested their support for others in need.
So I'm in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi, which is about 45 minutes outside of New Orleans. And
Katrina hit Mississippi hard too.
This was a storm that was about 400 miles in length. This was a monster storm in terms of size and its impact all along the Gulf Coast. It's really hard to grasp.
A storm with many stories. One that really touched John Becker was about a local restaurant owner.
She survived by getting in a tree, tucking her dog under her, and holding on to a tree for 4 hours in high water, praying that she wouldn't be swept away. And that tree stands in Bay St. Louis today as a marker of that moment.
He showed us the tree and what it's become. No longer alive, but still standing.
That's a live oak that's still standing. They cut this one up as a marker, and one of the angels looks at land and another looks at sea.
On the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, a time to remember, grow from lessons learned, and move forward.
There is a mourning that's happening for the lives lost, but also a celebration of just how far they have come in the last 20 years. That just didn't look possible in those first early days.